As his grace period comes to an end, John races around New York. He enters an alley and comes across the Tic-Tac Man, one of the Bowery King's spies. He hails a taxi, but the roads are congested. With only 20 minutes till he is formally excommunicado, he decides to get out of the car and flee once more, but not before giving the driver a gold coin to bring his dog safely to the Continental. He enters the library and requests a book, which he opens to discover a hidden compartment holding some coins, a cross, a marker, and a photograph of him and his wife, which he kisses. Ernest, a huge man, corners him in the bookshelves. Ernest doesn't care if John assures him he still has time. Who cares about a few minutes? The two have a fight, which ends with John breaking Ernest's jaw and snapping his neck with the book. However, it leaves him with a severe knife wound on his shoulder. So, with only 5 minutes to spare, he pays a visit to the doctor at his home address. The doctor agrees to assist, but is forced to stop stitching halfway through. The grace time has ended. John's $14 million reward is still in effect. After sewing himself up and ingesting some medications, John shoots and wounds the doctor at his request in order to convince the high table that the doctor complied with the excommunicado order. When John walks away, he is met by a swarm of assassins. They corner him in an antique arms shop, so John kills them in a savage sequence of bouts employing various antique blades. As John walks along the street, he is pursued by additional assassins. They pursue him into the horse stables, where John kills numerous adversaries with the horse's tremendous kicks. He rides out of the stables on horseback, but is pursued by 2 men on motorcycles. John dispatches them both on horseback. John's reward has been increased to $15 million. When John gets to the theater, he is instructed to empty his pockets and remove his belt. He visits with the director and requests her assistance by presenting the crucifix he obtained from the library. They talk about John's background. This is where he was raised. She leads him to the back of the theater, past the ballet dancers and jiu-jitsu wrestlers in training, and asks him what he wants. He wishes to travel to Casablanca. She complies, severing all links with him and branding him with the cross. A mystery woman walks inside the Continental. She passes a coin to Sharon, who alerts Winston, the manager, that an adjudicator has arrived. After Winston requests to examine Santino's body, the adjudicator reminds him that he must resign from his position because he allowed John to survive after shedding blood on Continental grounds. The adjudicator pays a visit to the Bowery King. He informs her that he is abiding by the excommunicado. She reminds him, however, that no one is exempt from the high table's regulations and that he must leave town because he provided John a rifle knowing what it would be used for. He laughs in her face, arguing that he cannot abdicate since he is the throne. John lands in Casablanca. Almost immediately, he is attacked by 3 men holding knives. One of them is murdered in the struggle, but it is cut short by a man who informs them both that the management has granted John pardon. The assassin is enraged and attacks John, but the man shoots him. He and John visit Morocco's Continental Hotel, where John is escorted to the manager's office. He sees photographs of a mother and her daughter before 2 snarling dogs come to guard him. Sophia, the manager, emerges from the shadows and shoots him in the chest. He collapses, but his suit is bulletproof. She tells him she should kill him, but he shows her a marker she made with John years ago as a result of John rescuing her daughter. She requests that he not deliver the marker, but John demands that she go him to visit her former boss. She reluctantly accepts. The adjudicator visits a modest sushi restaurant. Zero, the cook, recognizes her coin and tells her he didn't expect her to arrive so soon. He already knows about John and is determined to find him. The adjudicator orders him to do so, as well as to pursue all those who assisted him. Sophia returns heavily armed to John. She conceals a firearm inside one of the dog's jackets. John assures her that he only wants to speak with her employer, but she is skeptical. They arrive at a compound and meet with Sophia's former boss, Barada. John requests that Barada accompany him to the elder, who sits above the high table, so he can make atonement. Barada has no idea where he is, but he knows the elder only finds those he wants to find. He instructs John to travel to the desert and follow the stars until he is nearly dead, at which point the elder may or may not find him. Barada expects a gift before they can go. He wants one of Sophia's pets, but she refuses to give him one. Instead, he shoots it. It is wearing a bulletproof vest, which Barada is unaware of. John urges her against seeking vengeance, but Sophia shoots Barada, resulting in a confrontation with his crew. Barada's groin is attacked by the dog. Sophia shoots Barada in the leg once the guards are dead, and the two flee, but more guards are on their way. They blast their way out of the compound, her dogs obeying her commands, and head towards the desert. The director watches a ballet performance by her students in the theater. Meanwhile, her bodyguards are being slaughtered by vicious but effective ninjas. 3 males enter the stage and disrupt the performance. Zero and the adjudicator approach from behind. She informs the director that her pact with the high table prevents her from assisting John. She agrees to prove her loyalty. The adjudicator orders that her penalty be paid in blood. Zero slashes both of her hands but leaves her alive. John and Sophia set out towards the desert. John pricks his finger and smears his blood on the marker. Sophia's debt has been paid. Sophia gives her dogs the most of the water. She swills the remainder in her mouth before spitting some back into the bottle. She informs John that he is going to die either now or later. She follows John into the desert with the bottle. He walks for a day and a night across sand dunes before collapsing. Many guards were mercilessly killed by the ninjas at the Bowery King's complex. On the roof, Zero and the adjudicator approached the Bowery King. He expresses his willingness to prove devotion to the adjudicator, but she tells him that he has had his chance. He is rebellious and sends his pigeon away from harm's way before Zero punishes him with 7 slashes for the 7 shots he gave John. The Bowery King is thrown off the roof. A cloaked man encounters John in the desert. Then John finds himself in a tent. He is confronted by the elder, who tells him that he has never seen a man so lost. He inquires as to why he wishes to live. John claims it is to honor Helen. As a result, the elder gives him a choice: die here or return as the boogeyman, remembering through death. He will never be out, as he once was, but he can reverse his excommunication. In exchange, he must assassinate Winston. John complies and swears allegiance by severing his wedding ring finger and giving the band to the elder. The elder accepts his fealty oath. He directs personnel to assist him in preparing for his return to New York and supplies him with new attire. When John arrives in New York, he is confronted by 2 assassins. They are, however, assassinated by some ninjas. John is taken to visit Zero by the ninjas. A line of schoolchildren interrupts the battle between John and Zero. John escapes by killing 2 motorbike ninjas and stealing a motorcycle. Zero and his ninja assassins are on the hunt for John. While driving at high speeds on the freeway, John kills multiple sword-wielding opponents. Zero pursues him through the city, but they both collide near the Continental. Zero cannot assassinate John because he is on Continental territory. Zero follows Sharon as he leads John to a waiting room. Here, he admits to being a huge fan. He tells John they are the same, but John disagrees. John reunites with his dog, but instructs him to sit and wait until Winston is ready to see him. Winston and John meet in a glass chamber, which is only used when one needs to see what their opponent is hiding under the table. He is aware that John has come to kill him and would prefer to be slain by a friend, but he informs John that there is another option. He can either pull the trigger and sell his soul, eternally becoming the boogeyman and working for the high table, or he can fight and die as the man his wife loved. The adjudicator has arrived to see if Winston will resign. He is not going to. She wonders if John will murder him. He is not going to. As a result, she declares the Continental to be deconsecrated. Both guys are targets now that business can be performed on its premises. Some of the high table's finest will soon join them. Winston, however, feels fit to restore all of John's privileges under the circumstances. He'll need weapons. There are a lot of guns. John is led to the armaments room, where he learns that the high table has strengthened their armor and is advised to use a larger caliber round. Winston hides in the arms safe while John, Sharon, and a few loyal men proceed to face the high table goons. Because their armor is tougher than everyone expected, John must get up close and personal. The adjudicator calls Winston and asks how long he thinks he can keep up the defense. He hangs up the phone before she finishes speaking. Only John and Sharon survive the first wave of the high table. They reassemble in the arms safe, where Sharon shows him an armor-piercing shotgun. The second wave arrives, and John dispatches them quickly, the shotgun capable of blowing their heads clean off. The adjudicator calls Winston again and wonders if a parley would be advantageous. He concurs. John returns to the previous glass area, where he is ambushed by two ninjas and hurled through multiple glass exhibits. He eventually kills both of them with their own sword. As Zero taunts him through the glass, he makes his way upstairs, but is ambushed by two of Zero's best men. The shinobi have the upper hand and have the opportunities to kill John, but they choose not to do so in order to discuss the honor of fighting him. They knock John down again as the action resumes. They talk about him being out of shape because of his recent retirement as he struggles to get back up. John removes his belt and prepares it for use as a weapon. After a long third round in which a tired John resorts to groin kicks and ear slaps, John is able to perform a slam on an opponent that shatters the glass floor and sends everyone plummeting to the bottom floor. The shinobi is unable to stand, but John is. He departs to locate Zero, who is on the higher floor. Zero and John engage in a lengthy sword fight. John eventually takes the upper hand by employing Zero's own disappearing trick against him. Even though he's bleeding profusely, Zero fights on until John thrusts a sword through his chest. Both men are exhausted and sat together. Zero praises the battle and assures John that he will catch up to him. He will not. Zero slumps to the side, dead, as John walks away. Winston and the adjudicator are having a parley on the roof. She informs Winston that this was only the first wave, that more will follow, and that the Continental will be destroyed. Winston responds by stating he can reclaim the Continental. His ties to New York extend beyond these walls. He is New York. As the adjudicator decides Winston's display of strength was a display of fealty, John arrives. She reintroduces the Continental and rehires him as manager, but warns him that something must be done about John. Winston agrees and repeatedly shoots John. The bullets bounce off his jacket, pushing him back until he falls from the roof, bouncing off various objects that stop his fall. Nonetheless, he lands hard. The adjudicator is pleased. She decides to check on John's body as the adjudicator departs. She re-enters the Continental and informs Winston that the body has been removed. She informs him that they do not want John Wick to pursue them. Winston nods and murmurs, "Baba Yaga." The ticking of the clock. A man pushes a cart while John's dog follows. He yanks a beaten and shattered John from the cart, which comes to a halt in front of a makeshift throne. The Bowery King sits on the throne, sipping a Coke. He's badly cut up and tells John to raise his hand if he can hear him. John raises his three-fingered hand. The Bowery King discusses John's treason and the norms of the High Table. He expresses his displeasure that more things are done under the table. He asks John if he's also pissed off. John gradually raises his head. He's bloodied and has a swollen eye, yet he can still respond. Yeah,